Smoke poured through the marble atrium as alarms tore through the building. People trampled past a woman crumpled on the staircase, her leg twisted beneath her, her voice barely a whisper. "Leave me. I can't walk." Marcus Whitlock wasn't supposed to be on that floor. He was just the maintenance tech nobody noticed. The widower raising a 7-year-old alone on a paycheck that barely covered rent. But when everyone else ran, Marcus stopped. He didn't know her name. He didn't know she controlled a billion-dollar company. He only knew one thing. She couldn't walk, and he wasn't going to leave her behind. What he did next would be caught on camera, and it would change both their lives forever. The heat from the 3rd floor pressed down the stairwell in waves. Marcus dropped to one knee beside her, his flashlight beam cutting through the haze. Up close, she looked younger than he expected, and far more afraid than the woman in the framed photo on the lobby wall downstairs. The one that read Eleanor Voss, founder and CEO. "Ma'am, I've got you," he said, his voice steady even as his pulse wasn't. "Can you put weight on it at all?" "No," her breath caught between words. "Go, please. You don't understand who's going to be looking for." "I don't need to understand," Marcus cut in gently. "I need you to hold on to my neck." She hesitated, staring at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Kindness, offered with nothing expected in return, was not a currency she recognized anymore. Somewhere above them, a support beam groaned, and the decision made itself. She wrapped her arms around him, and Marcus lifted her the way he'd once lifted his daughter off playground equipment. Careful, certain, unwilling to drop what mattered. They didn't speak again until the 3rd landing. His shirt was soaked through, his shoulders screaming under her weight, and still he kept moving. One step, then another, then another. Somewhere behind them, the fire found the electrical room, and the lights along the stairwell died in a slow, rolling blackout. "Why are you doing this?" Eleanor asked into the dark, her voice smaller than it had been in the boardroom for 20 years. "Because somebody has to," Marcus said. "And today, it's me." They emerged into the gray morning air 40 minutes later, Marcus's knees buckling the second the sidewalk met his boots. Paramedics swarmed her stretcher. A firefighter caught Marcus before he hit the pavement, and the last thing he saw before the world tilted sideways was a phone held up somewhere in the crowd, its camera pointed directly at them. He didn't think about that phone again until 3 days later, when his supervisor called him into a back office, wearing an expression Marcus couldn't read. "You're not in trouble," Hank said quickly, catching the alarm on Marcus's face. "But corporate wants to talk to you. Personally." "Corporate," Marcus repeated flatly. "About what?" Hank slid a folded newspaper across the desk. The headline read, "Mystery Hero Carries Voss Robotics CEO to Safety." Below it, a grainy photo of Marcus's back, Eleanor's arms slung over his shoulder, smoke swallowing the building behind them. Marcus stared at it the way a man stares at a stranger wearing his own face. "I didn't want this," he said quietly. "I know," Hank said. "Doesn't mean it's not happening." That evening, Marcus picked up Zoe from his neighbor's apartment, her backpack half unzipped, a drawing crumpled in her fist. She held it up before he'd even closed the door behind them. "I made you a superhero cape," she announced, "because Miss Reyes said you were on the news." Marcus crouched down to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm not a superhero, Bug. I just helped somebody." "That's what superheroes do, Daddy." She said it like it settled the matter permanently, the way only a 7-year-old could. He almost told her the truth that night, the part he hadn't told anyone. That for one full second, standing at the top of that staircase, with smoke curling around his ankles, he'd thought about walking away. Not because he didn't care, because he was tired and scared, and he had a daughter waiting for him at home, who needed her father in one piece, more than the world needed another dead hero. That half second of hesitation lived somewhere he never let Zoe see. A private shame folded quietly beneath the story everyone else was already calling brave. The black car arrived on a Tuesday, idling outside their apartment building, like it belonged to a different zip code entirely. Marcus stood at the window with his coffee going cold in his hand. "Is that for us?" Zoe asked, nose pressed to the glass. "It's for me," Marcus said. "Stay with Miss Reyes, okay? I'll be back before dinner." He wasn't sure that was a promise he could keep. Inside Voss Robotics headquarters, the elevator opened onto a floor made almost entirely of glass, and Marcus felt every eye in the lobby follow him toward the boardroom doors. Someone had clearly briefed the room on who was arriving, because when the doors opened, every executive at the long table rose to their feet at once. Eleanor Voss stood at the head of the table, a cane resting against her chair, her expression unreadable in a way that made Marcus's stomach tighten. "Mr. Whitlock," she said, "thank you for coming." "Wasn't much of a choice, considering the car," Marcus said, and a ripple of surprised laughter moved through the room. Eleanor's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Please, sit." He didn't sit. Something in the air of that room told him this wasn't a thank you visit. Not entirely. Near the far end of the table, a man in a charcoal suit shifted uncomfortably, refusing to meet Marcus's eyes. Marcus didn't know his name yet. He would learn it soon enough, and he would learn exactly why the man was so eager for this meeting to end quickly. "There's something you should know before we go any further," Eleanor said, and the room went very still. The fire in that building wasn't an accident. Marcus felt the floor shift slightly beneath him. "What do you mean, not an accident?" "I mean someone in this company wanted that explosion to happen," she said, her eyes flicking, just briefly, toward the man in the charcoal suit. "And I believe you may have carried me down those stairs faster than whoever said it intended." The room held its breath. Marcus looked from Eleanor to the nervous executive and back again, and understood, with a cold certainty settling into his chest, that he had walked into something far larger than a thank you card and a handshake. "Why tell me this?" he asked slowly. "Because," Eleanor said, "you're the only person in this building I'm certain wasn't involved." Marcus didn't sit down, not yet. His eyes moved back to the man in the charcoal suit, who was studying the polished table like it might offer him an exit. "Who is he?" Marcus asked. "Preston Adler," Eleanor said, "head of our robotics division. Also the man who lost the promotion to my office when the board chose me over him 3 years ago." Preston's head snapped up. "That's not, Eleanor. That's a hell of an accusation to make in front of a stranger." "He's not a stranger," Eleanor said evenly. "He's the reason I'm alive to make it." The room stayed frozen, the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Marcus felt it too, the sense that whatever happened next in this boardroom would matter more than anything that had happened in that stairwell. "I have the maintenance logs," said a woman near the end of the table, younger, sharper-eyed than the rest. "Someone rerouted the electrical load to that floor 2 days before the fire. It wasn't standard protocol. I flagged it to legal last week." All eyes shifted to a thin man beside Preston, whose face had gone the color of old paper. He hadn't said a word since Marcus walked in. "Daniel," Eleanor said quietly, "you reviewed that report. You sat on it." "I was protecting the company," the lawyer said, voice cracking. "If word got out that someone deliberately—" "You were protecting him," Eleanor said, nodding toward Preston. "There's a difference." Marcus watched the two men unravel in real time and understood something Eleanor already seemed to know. Fear made people small, and it made them dangerous in exactly the same breath. He thought of Zoe, waiting at Mispel, Ria's kitchen table with her superhero cape, and felt an unexpected pull to leave this room and its politics behind entirely. "This isn't my fight," Marcus said finally. "I came here because your assistant called. I didn't come here for a corporate scandal." "I know," Eleanor said, "which is exactly why I need you to hear the rest before you decide anything." She told him about the foundation she wanted to build. Employee-focused, single-parent-focused, born entirely out of the 40 minutes he'd spent carrying her down a burning staircase. She told him she wanted him to run its community operations, not as a reward, but because he was the only person in the building that day who hadn't asked what was in it for him. Marcus almost laughed. "I fix broken HVAC units, Miss Voss. I don't run foundations." "You ran toward danger when everyone else ran from it," she said. "I can teach a person spreadsheets. I can't teach them that." He told her he'd think about it, which was, in truth, a polite way of saying no. That night, he sat across from Zoe at their small kitchen table, picking at dinner he didn't have an appetite for. "You're doing the quiet thinking face," Zoe announced, pointing her fork at him. "I got offered a job," Marcus admitted. "A big one, working for the lady from the fire." "That's good, right?" "It's complicated, Bug. It means people watching me all the time. It means being somebody people expect things from." He exhaled. "I don't know if I want that kind of attention." Zoe considered this, with the seriousness only a 7-year-old could summon over macaroni. "Miss Reyes said the lady's company is going to help kids like the Marsh twins. Their dad lost his job." She looked up at him. "You always say helping is helping, even when it's scary." Marcus stared at his daughter, struck quiet by the plain, unblinking truth of her. She wasn't wrong. She was rarely wrong about the things that mattered. The following week, a journalist named Priya Okafor showed up at Marcus's door, having connected the maintenance log leak to a tip from inside Voss Robotics. She wasn't interested in the hero story anymore. She was chasing the sabotage. "I'm not confirming anything," Marcus told her at the doorstep, one hand braced on the frame. "I'm not asking you to," Priya said. "I'm asking if you know Preston Adler tried to have the security footage from that stairwell quietly deleted." Marcus's jaw tightened. "It wasn't deleted?" "Not entirely. Enough of it survived to place him near the electrical room 40 minutes before the explosion." She studied Marcus a moment. "Someone's also been offering people money to stop talking. I'd be careful who you take calls from this week." He didn't have to wait long to understand what she meant. 2 days later, a man Marcus had never met approached him outside the hardware store, offering an envelope thick with cash for his trouble, and a quiet suggestion that Marcus simply stop returning Eleanor's calls. Marcus didn't take the envelope. He took a photo of the man's car instead and handed both to Priya that same afternoon. The story broke on a Thursday, not the version Marcus expected. Softly framed heroism and warm human interest, but Priya's full investigation. Sabotage, a cover-up, an attempted bribe, and at the center of it, unwitting and reluctant, Marcus Whitlock. The rescue footage, the one he'd never agreed to release, spread faster than the fire itself had. Overnight, his face was everywhere, and so was Zoe's name in comment sections he wished she'd never see. He almost pulled away from Eleanor entirely then, furious that his family's privacy had become collateral in a story that was never supposed to be his. He told her as much, standing in her office doorway, voice low and hard. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said. "Not the fire, not the cameras, not my daughter's name in a headline." "You're right," Eleanor said, and there was no defensiveness in it, only tired honesty. "I've spent my whole career letting this company use people and calling it opportunity. I won't do that to you too. If you walk away right now, I'll understand completely." Marcus studied her, searching for the performance he expected, and not finding it. For the first time since the stairwell, he saw her plainly, not as a CEO or a headline, but as a woman with no family of her own left to call, who'd built an empire and still gone home every night to an empty house. "You don't have anyone, do you?" he said quietly. "Waiting for you, I mean?" Eleanor's composure cracked, just slightly. "No, not in a long time." Something in Marcus softened. Not romance yet, barely even friendship, but a recognition passing quietly between two people who understood loneliness from opposite ends of a very different life. Preston Adler's arrest made the 6 o'clock news 2 weeks later, the sabotage charges compounded by evidence of witness tampering. Daniel, the lawyer, cooperated in exchange for leniency, and in doing so, handed prosecutors everything they needed. The board that once doubted whether a maintenance technician belonged anywhere near a leadership table now had far bigger concerns than optics. Marcus accepted the position that same month, not because the scandal had passed, but because Zoe had looked him dead in the eye over breakfast and said, "You always tell me being scared isn't a reason to say no." He hadn't had an answer for that except yes. The foundation launched in spring, named quietly, without ceremony, the Whitlock Family Fund, dedicated to supporting single parents navigating unstable work and housing. Marcus insisted his own story stay out of the marketing entirely. The families it helped mattered more than the headline that had created it. On a warm Saturday months later, Marcus stood at the edge of a newly built community playground, watching Zoe race across the mulch with a boy her own age, laughing in a way she hadn't in years. Eleanor stood beside him. No cameras, no board members, no cane anymore. "You ever think about that morning?" she asked. "The stairwell?" "Every day," Marcus admitted. "Mostly I think about how close I came to walking past you like everyone else did. But you didn't." "No," he said, watching Zoe wave at him from the top of the slide. "I didn't." Eleanor smiled, something quiet and real. "Funny thing about kindness, you never know exactly what it's going to save until long after you've already given it." Marcus watched his daughter's cape, the same paper one she'd drawn for him months ago, now taped proudly to his refrigerator at home, and understood, finally, that she'd been right about him from the very beginning.